Namaskar and good morning. First, let me congratulate FICCI on gathering today for an annual meet, which is the 95th. That's a big number. And I wish you many more 95th. Industry associations play a very important role in policy making, and India has always benefited from the inputs which FICCI has been giving consistently to all the governments, and also probably envisaging how, by the strength of policy, not just the industry benefits, but also projects the image of a country and places it in the world economic order in its due position. So the work that you do individually, members of FICCI, in your own area, in your own industry, is one thing, and the collective work that you do as FICCI in providing guidance and also inputs for administrations, and also the campaigns that you conduct world over, have always had a positive effect of sharing thoughts, of enabling better information about a country from where you speak from, and therefore create the right ecosystem for investments, for greater global order. And on that score, for the 95 years of service, I do commend the FICCI for their contribution, and I value it. Today, I'm not here to so much speak about what has been achieved, where the numbers are, how the world is looking, and therefore what I want the industry to do. I don't think I need to say anything. You're all on the top of things. And numbers are all with you anyway. But I'll just flag off a few thoughts which are in my mind, which perhaps are also in your mind, but when we exchange it in a forum like this, I expect it would have a lot more introspection, a lot more consideration from the point of view of policy making, and for you all to respond as and when you choose to. It is a reality that today, globally, we see a major reset happening, and a reset not just in terms of sourcing your inputs, not just looking at economies which are probably still reeling under the COVID-19, but also looking at the uncertainties, the other uncertainties which are really constraining our supply chains. So it could be a war in one area. It could be the after effect of the pandemic even now. It could be an unaddressed concern of lack of vaccines and therefore the exposure in a third area. And fourth, also because of the climate change, where countries are rapidly moving to adjust themselves with the nationally determined commitments, which are majorly going to impact on policy making, not just for India, for many other countries as well. Even with all this said, India has numbers which it can be looking at as a positive indicator for not just the government, but also for industries. I'll just put forth just one set of numbers and not go beyond that, because that is indicative of what is India's strength. I'm not talking about the macroeconomic fundamentals. All of you are quite well versed in the current position. For India, the current position is a position of strength. I don't need to highlight it again. But that one fact, which besides the macroeconomic fundamentals give us the strength, is a World Economic Forum data, which I think all of us will have to look at. And that reassures us that the 25 years to come, the Amrit Kaal that Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji keeps talking about, has a lot more than what the name Amrit Kaal just indicates, but it has got absolutely fundamental statistics that we need to know. And that is the World Economic Forum telling us that there shall be 140 million middle-income households added to India's economy by 2030, and 14 million high net worth individual households by 2030 again. That one set of data tells us where the market and its potential lies. An industry, after all, will have to look at from where it expects demand to generate from. And if that is the kind of size we are talking about, most often industry wonders where market of a scale exists. Market of a scale is very difficult to obtain by sheer aggregation from 10 different jurisdictions. But here is one India, which by 2030, and that is not my data, it is not any research group's data, it is the World Economic Forum, where all of us engage, you in your capacity and government in its own capacity, understanding how the spread of the economies are world over. So that is something which I think India's Amrit Kaal is waiting for you to optimally utilize. And that's very directly linked to what you're looking for, demand generation. So that is something which I would like to have you think about at your 95th annual meeting. Second is, technology is not what we talked about yesterday. Technology is what's going to be tomorrow, day after. And in that, for the scale and size that technology wants, especially the scope with which technology is spreading, and that is daily use technology, not just the frontier technology which might help in satellite building or nuclear fusion, but it's also daily technology where the end user is adept at using the technology with which you're providing service or products. And in that, I think India has shown the lead thanks to the government's favorable approach in providing technology and technology platforms as a public common good. So when government has provided absolutely robust framework for technology use, that actually gives the opportunity for those who are commercially wanting to exploit it without having to do R&D and invest in it. So the government has provided that leapfrogging advantage where trading communities or manufacturing communities all can reach the end customer with no additional cost and no additional infrastructure that you might want to use, but just latch on to this and you're there. So when a government has done that, and that is what we are going to be showcasing during the G20 summits through the year, it is also something which I would think industry should benefit from and also showcase it in your own forums. So India's achievement in terms of digital, can I say it this way, India's achievements in terms of the digital capabilities that we have, be it in payment, be it in the financial area, be it in health, be it in education, be it in banking. The achievements are absolutely stunning. It's not my self-praise, but it is something which makes many of those who watch our presentations amazed that we have achieved the technology, but we are also showing the scaled up technology in its ground by implementing it. And the government is definitely using every opportunity during the G20 to showcase it so that countries which are interested in any one of the silo of the digital achievements of India, they can benefit from. We are willing to share and talk with them. Equally, Indian industry of any size should familiarize itself with it and make sure that you're able to use it for your benefit. It gives leaps ahead, a kind of a jump which otherwise is not going to be achieved over decades. I think on that score, I would want the industry technology interface, along with those bodies which are really spearheading this, to be a lot more robust and active, to be a lot more real time. A common concern for all of us is climate. Only recently, a few days ago, I'm sure all of you all would have read it through the media, that there are countries who would want to fund their transition from not so green to green production of materials, production of items like steel. They want to fund their transition by raising tariff walls against countries which send their products as a matter of normal exports. So when India is going to, at least in some items, and I can straight away quote a common known example of steel, when you're going to export your steel, you will be facing tariff walls in the name of climate action tax. This is going to affect us. And this is not something which I'm speculating on. There are measures announced by countries. For India, therefore, both for meeting our nationally determined commitments and also for industry to quickly understand this necessity for resetting yourselves so that the tariff walls which are coming up newly in the name of climate change is something which we should face and be ready for. And when you're being ready, or when you're readying yourselves for it, there's a role that the government and the industry can play together. Diplomacy helps, so does policy, and so does any tweaking that we need to do in order to facilitate you to become a far more greener industry in your own specialized domains. So this challenge globally is not just of the climate change, but the challenges are also due to the policy reflecting the climate change which is coming across the world, for which we in our country are doing everything to adapt to renewable energy. But in the meanwhile, that transition has its own costs which are going to fall on us. I want industry to be fully seized of it, not just highlighting the burden which is going to fall on you. I'm highlighting it myself. But how do we reduce the burden of that costs which are going to come on you? As a government which should be conscious of the burden on industry, which are extraneous burden. I'm speaking about it myself. I would expect FICCI and the office bearers of FICCI to please go into the depths of these kinds of developments which are happening. I just quoted steel. Maybe I don't know of many more which are happening around the world. We need to have an approach, just as we have taken a very, very ambitious approach in giving nationally determined commitments, very ambitious ones which have been given by Honorable Prime Minister, both in Paris, which have been almost met, and in Scotland, which have been ramped up after the commitments which were made when Honorable Prime Minister was in Scotland. Post that too, we've given minor tweakings so that we can meet the ambitions. So I'm only expecting industry to tell me and tell the government as to how climate change itself is affecting you, which all of us have been talking about. But that climate change adjustments which many countries are doing are becoming a cost to us. How are we going to face it? Is something which I would like to hear from you after your deliberations. I spoke about the G20, where India is definitely, as a government, with the presidency in our side, going to showcase not just the digital achievements, but also the prowess of our youth, the skilling that is going on in a major way, the new sunrise sectors which are adding to India's economy will all be showcased during G20. There are, of course, Business 20, Youth 20, Women 20, Industry 20, so very many different forums under the Sherpa track in which I'm sure the voice of India's industry, the concerns of India's industry, which are normally voiced, but the achievements of India's industry will have also a place, I would think, and therefore we need to hear about that in every opportunity that you have for the G20, not just in these forums which I've listed out under the Sherpa track, but also in each of your states. Every state is going to host one or the other meeting of the G20. Every one state. And wherever you are present, I would think there's an opportunity for you to speak up or put up information, share it during that meeting which happens in your respective states. We've been speaking and also acting on China +1. But now, as you are aware, it's also going to be Europe +1. So +1 is becoming now +2 in a way. So for us not to just talk about the +1, the government is acting. Government has brought in a lot of facilitation, tweaking of the rules, making sure that we sit and engage with those investors or industries which are wanting to move out in the sense, remain there and search for one more destination, or completely move out, each for its own. The industries are engaging with us. So if Vietnam, Philippines, or Indonesia are drawing a lot of attention, India is also drawing an attention, and you're seeing it in the way in which many of the industries are co-locating themselves. +1 is actually happening. But the new +1, which is sometimes very difficult to understand, but I can say, and you will understand this, I'm sure you recognize it already, the recession, the suspected long-drawn recession, which is likely to affect Europe, is not just going to affect your exports. It gives us an opportunity for many of the investments which are there for now looking for a different place from where their activities can continue to happen. So as much you're preparing yourself for a long-drawn recession in the Western world, the developed world, I would think it is also the best time for you to work out strategies for drawing those manufacturers from there to India. Even as their headquarters there, it might be useful for them to think of sourcing many things from here and producing from here, at least for markets which are in this part of the globe. But even as I say this, just a word in jest. If there are voices suggesting that India should not be focusing on manufacturing, but it should focus only on services, I'm sorry, no. We should be focusing on manufacturing. We should be focusing on newer areas of services, no doubt. The service sector, particularly the IT-driven service sector, has already made a big impact to the extent today 60% of our GDP is being contributed by them or more. But it is necessary for us to strengthen our manufacturing. And in that, I think the Indian startups have shown us one way which is going to be very suitable for Indian industries. They are doing all the innovation. I would seek industry to keep a close watch on the innovations coming out of the startups and their energy and the enthusiasm with which they're just moving ahead. If you're ready to adopt, if you're ready to commercialize, if you're ready to scale up that innovation which is coming out of the startups, I think we'll benefit ourselves, both the startups and yourselves. Together, India can benefit out of it. So the innovation, the speeding up with which the registration of patents are happening, the unicorns coming up with fantastic ideas which can be scaled up, are all there for you to pick up, are all there for you to scale up. And therefore, I would think manufacturing industry can benefit from the new energy of the startups, not just for the core industry of old India, but also for the frontier sunrise sectors. And therefore, the path for India's industry is now so enriched by government policy, the startups, the frenetic speed with which innovations are happening. The number of registrations on patents are amazing. They have increased at least threefold between 2014 and today. So it's for us now to ensure that they are not being patented for somebody else to pick it up and scale up. It's for us to pick it up and scale it up. It's very inspiring and motivating for me, especially at a time when we are readying the next budget for the country, a budget which will follow the spirit of the earlier budgets. We are going to set the template which was set earlier, but follow it and take it further for India's next 25 years, so that at 2047, as was indicated by the Honorable Prime Minister, we look forward to our children living in an India which is 100 years free after the imperial rule, but live in an India in 2047 which will be far developed and far more a place where both our young and old can live together happily and in comfort. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I wish you all the very best. Jai Hind.
Thank you.